Hello, Dave here, and I've got a few notes today to refer to because I'm going to tell you a little story, but I might need to remind myself of where I am in the middle of it. So first of all, we have no idea as and when our life might be going to change. But this story is about, well, you can't really say discovering, but it is kind of discovering, experiencing the essence of life, is how I might put it. So when the universe chooses to give you something, it gives it based on worthiness, and worthiness is usually based on dedication. So as we apply ourselves to the spiritual path, and we're moving forward in life, and we're experiencing different things, and we're involving ourselves in things spiritually or of a spiritual nature, that dedication is kind of acknowledged by the universe, and every now and again we're considered worthy to receive something of the nature of a transformation. And transformation always takes place as a result of vibrational shift. So at this particular time, my partner and I were preparing a spiritual retreat that was going to take place later in the year. And from memory, I think it was around 2011. So on this particular day, she had asked me, could I get hold of some oak wands from the woodland near us. So this is an oak wand. It's a beautiful piece of oak, and it's wand-like. You can point it and do various things with it, but they are beautiful things. And so I scoured the woodland and came back with just one, and we needed around 30. So clearly we were not able to do this particular process that we wanted to do, this celebration, this ceremony using the oak wands. And so, well, I can sign that one to history. Basically, it wasn't going to happen. Now on this particular day, I had to go and visit a friend. He'd asked me would I give him a hand to move some furniture, a desk and some television set or other. And so on that afternoon, about 5 p.m, after work, I set off down the lane. Now I live on a single track lane, a windy lane, with woods on the left and fields opposite. And as I went round the bend, going down the lane, about only 200 metres or so from home, I suddenly saw a vision that struck the most terrible pain into my heart. As I looked to the right, 2 magnificent oak trees in full leaf had been felled, and they lay horizontal in the field. I stopped and gazed at them for a moment. Just incomprehensibly, who could do this and why? They weren't in the way of anything. They were just standing in a hedge line, throwing their shadows into the field. But I couldn't stop because my friend was waiting for me, so I hurried over to see him, only a couple of miles away, came back as soon as I could, and then I parked the car and walked down the lane. So my emotions were just all over the place, you know, I just couldn't concentrate. The thoughts were rushing around in my head. Why? Who would murder these trees like this? So as I approached the trees, I said a prayer and asked for permission to stand upon the stump of one tree, and so I climbed up onto this stump, and it was about 1.5 meters, maybe 4 feet or so in diameter, and I stood on there for a moment or two, and I was gazing up the horizontal trunk of the tree. Well, when I was in this position, I was kind of filled with a state of joy, bizarrely, at the thought of being able to walk up the trunk of the tree, this horizontal trunk now, and into the canopy. Well, having spent a lot of time in trees as a boy, and even as an adult I was still climbing trees, the joy of being inside the canopy of a tree is something quite indescribable, really. Well, it is to me anyway. So I scrambled up onto the tree, onto the trunk, and I started to walk up the trunk and touching the branches and climbing into the canopy, and just being this space of absolute wonder and joy within the leafy canopy of this beautiful oak. I went as far as I could and then climbed down onto the earth so I could be fully embraced in this canopy, which was now lying in the field. Well, just as I climbed down, there in front of me, sticking out of the earth like a spear, was an oak wand. So, how oak wands form is, as oak trees get old, the ends of the branches die off and they're kind of left almost like a stag's horn. Some people call them stag's horn oaks. And you see in old oaks, when they're in full leaf, if you stand back, you can see these dagger-like wands sticking into the sky. So joy of joy was now turning into excitement. Here was a wand, and there was another wand, and there was another wand. And so I scurried around in the canopy of the tree, and then outside of the tree, and there in the field were all these wands stuck in the earth. I gathered them all up into a pile, and I went back for the car. So I walked back up 200 metres or so, fetched the car down, and I put all the wands in the back, and then I drove back home with the wands. I got them all out and counted them, and there was exactly, bar one, the number we needed for the retreat, which from memory was either 28 or 29. I already had one that I'd found in the woodland, and here were the other 28 or 29 making up the number we needed for the retreat. What an amazing gift. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, what are the chances of that? So in the death throes of these trees, I was just given what we needed. It was absolutely amazing. So I took a couple of candles and walked back down the lane to the trees. I stood in front of the first tree and poured out blessings and prayers from my heart into the stump of the tree, and then I stepped forward and placed the candle and lit it and said some more prayers and spoke some more words, whatever was coming through me at the time. I then did the same thing at the second tree, and when I felt I'd done all I could do, even though there was still this pain in my heart, which was also washing around with joy and excitement now, I left it for the day and I walked home and made some dinner. The following evening, at the same time, around about the same time, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, I walked down again with 2 more candles. And as I walked around the bend in the lane again, yet more shock. There was not one twig or leaf left of those 2 trees. They'd been cut up and completely removed, and yet only 200 metres away I hadn't heard a chainsaw all day. It was absolutely bizarre. And even on the day before I'd heard no chainsaws when they were cut down. How do you explain it? Well, you can't explain it. It's inexplicable. So I stepped up to the first tree stump. The remains of the candle were still there, but the tree fellas had carved the date in the stump, which I thought was, I'm not quite sure what I thought about it really. It was an acknowledgement that that day they'd cut the tree down. But they'd left the candle there, which I felt was respectful. I walked to the second tree, and if you think the wands were the gift that I was given this day or the day before, it was nothing compared with what was about to happen. As I stood in front of the trunk with the candle, saying a prayer, saying a few words, I opened my eyes, and there was a kind of sudden whooshing noise, and the spirit and essence of life from the tree came out from the roots, out of the stump, and went up into the universe. It was the most incredible and magnificent divine experience. And although you're kind of seeing it with your eyes, you're not really seeing it with your eyes. You're experiencing it with your whole being. And to try and describe it is very difficult. But it was like, as it emerged, it was like watching particles of light, silvery light, tinged with blue. And this was a stream that was the diameter of the trunk, just a few feet in front of me, just emerging, and I could feel it coming from the earth through all the roots, and it was as if I could see it in another dimensional reality. And this was whooshing upwards, and as it went up into the sky, it's like the sky morphed into this darker space as the universe opened to receive the essence of life which had once been the tree. And as it opened, the sky was just, if you could imagine a starlit night with more stars than you could ever imagine, it was just these pinpoints of light. And this whole essence of life re-merged with the essence of the universe. It was quite amazing. And I stood there, just mouth agape, I should imagine, because the whole thing, you experience it. You don't just see it with your eyes, it's an experience. And that experience triggers a vibrational shift within you. Your whole consciousness changes as a result of seeing this process. So from that moment, I understood the essence of life, the essence that it's eternal, and the essence of rebirth. So all these particles that swim around in the ocean of wisdom, which is everywhere, touching us all the time. When life is triggered, whether it's a seed that sprouts in the ground or a child that is being nurtured in the womb, this essence of all these particles of light and life are suddenly implanted into that being. So for example, when my life is gone and my essence returns to that great ocean of wisdom, when the rebirth comes, it's not Dave that is reborn, it's the particles that are then merging into a new form of life. So I might come back as a tree, who knows? You don't know. But the nature of that eternity is the thing that's really imprinted into you in a moment like that. It's like there you saw the essence of life leave that tree. And this was on the second day after it was cut down. And it re-emerges into the universe, into this endless infinity of creativity. And those particles are just waiting to be used again, basically. Waiting to create life in another reality. Whether it's here, or in another universe, or on Earth, who knows? Whether it's plant, animal, mineral, human, who knows? So that really was two amazing gifts that were given from the process of those two trees being cut down. But you think about it, 100 people could have walked past those trees and not had any experience at all. Why was I lucky enough to have that experience? Well, I think the answer to that is the way you work on your heart constantly to soften it, to get the darkness out of it, to bring more light into it, is the dedication of the path. And how that dedication is suddenly rewarded one day out of nowhere. It's like suddenly there's a situation that brings your heart into so much pain, but leaves it with so much joy, so much knowledge, so much excitement, so many gifts, and an experience that you can't possibly forget, because you've been taken into something and experienced it. And when you've had that experience, you absolutely have this knowing that that is eternity. Sometime after this, I continued to go down to the trees each evening, light a candle, stand on the stumps, say a few words, and I don't know, the life had left by this time, but I still had a connection with that space. And I was yet to be given a third amazing gift, but I'll leave that sharing for another time. I hope you've enjoyed this and hope to see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching.